Welcome to Two Hypnotherapists Talking with me, Denise Billen-Mejia, in Delaware, USA.
And me, Martin Furber, in Preston, UK.
This weekly podcast is for anyone and everyone who'd like to know more about the fascinating subject of hypnosis and the benefits it offers.
I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and psychotherapist.
I'm a retired medical doctor turned consulting hypnotist.
We are Two Hypnotherapists Talking.
So let's get on with the episode. Martin, it's been one of those days again.
It's been one of those weeks trying to get this podcast together.
Yeah, that and the other one and the radio show and everything else. And I don't know if things happen in threes, because it seems to be a whole lot more than threes right now, but Murphy's Law is in full force. Yeah. Every time I think, oh, I've got it, and now I'll be able to do something else happens. And I think that you have been an incredible godsend in helping talk me down. I do know all the things. I help my clients do all the things, but it's been really helpful. And I think it might be helpful for our listeners if you could just, talk me through as my blood pressure slowly sinks down. Now you've fixed my problem.
Well, take a deep breath and relax. Well, one of the first things they told me actually at Hypno College was having reciprocal treatment, having reciprocal hypnotherapy. Because of course we've all got to keep that spare mental capacity. Exactly.
Yeah. And running a business is most of us don't learn that, but in whatever capacity we have in our jobs, we aren't taught the business of that thing unless we happen to be in business school.
Yeah, of course. And then when you
get business cards, hand them out, people will just come to you.
Yeah, sure they will. Of course, the other thing they're very light on the teaching is the techie side, especially for people of our years.
Yeah. My advancing years,
mine too.
Of course, tech changes.
Yeah,
tech changes.
Changes all the time.
How dare you move that button from over there to over there? All right, so I am beginning to relax. What would you think I would do next? What do you think would be a good idea? Apart from smiling and laughing, because laughing always helps. Brings your blood pressure down too. Yeah,
absolutely does. Yeah, but it's the breathing, isn't it? I always go for the 7-7-7. In for 7, hold for 7, and out for 7, and make sure you empty. And of course, I'd explain it in the simplest of forms. It's that it activates the parasympathetic nervous system and slows the mind and body down. Of course,
you can feel it. Feel it.
Of course, you being a doctor will be able to give a far more complicated explanation.
Complicated is overrated. Simple is easy. It brings your blood pressure down, your heart rate drops, slower breath really helps. And it stops the swirling around, like, it's okay, it's only time, and I have as many hours in the day as anybody else. So it's always tomorrow.
You know what this begs the question, though, what I was going to ask you as well, because obviously this is our first broadcast. What do people think they're going to, what do people expect when they go to see a hypnotherapist?
Well, they actually see me. They've already spoken to me for at least half an hour on a call, because I always do a free call, and I think you do the same thing.
Yeah.
So we've gotten rid of the idea that anybody's going to get a pocket watch out and swing over in somebody's eyes, and we've gotten rid of the idea that it's mind control. And most people who are significantly worried about that probably wouldn't have called in the first place. But I think that there is still a little residual, the therapist is going to just snap their fingers and, the weight will just fall off and you'll be a skinny person tomorrow, or, instantly you don't have to do anything. And of course, we both know that we're doing 10% of the work. The real work is in the subconscious minds of the clients, but they have to be willing to change. And the willingness to change is really...
Yeah, I mean, we're always told, they need to play the game. I'm not guessing. I know you also provide audio recordings for in between sessions, for example. So do I. And obviously that is important that they do that. They listen to the recordings each day. I mean, again, just a little example with me. I tend to use background music in my recordings as well. And when the next time the person comes into my office to see me, that music is playing very low in the background. So immediately the subconscious feels secure. It recognizes the music
So are you extremely organized and you keep the same music for, you know which client got which music, or do you use the same underlying track for,
I use the same
the most of
underlying
it?
track all the time. Again, it's that thing with the mind liking repetition. But the
Mhm.
mind picks up on signals, when you see red, you feel danger, the way we're programmed, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
I work on the basis that they associate that music with the last thing they listen to every night. They feel safe and secure in their own bed. So they walk into my office and they hear it playing just gently in the background.
Yeah, that's a
Straight
good
away, it triggers
idea.
something in the subconscious. That's my train of thought anyway.
That's a good idea. Maybe I'll start doing that. Of course, I don't see people physically in their office. I see
Mm,
them almost entirely on Zoom. I have made a few house calls,
mm.
but no, I can't do that to Preston from over here in Delaware. But there have been a few local people I've seen for specific, because they cannot
Mm,
deal with computer, or for those few clients that it would not be safe, like patients with epilepsy. I
yeah.
would have to physically see them rather than see them on Zoom.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Actually, talking of Delaware and Preston, it might be a good time to let people know who we are and where we're from.
That's a good idea. Yeah. Shall I go first? Will
Yeah,
it be
why
very
not?
sexist?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Denise Billen-Mejia, and I am a former doctor. I'm originally from Salisbury, the UK, but I've lived in the States for a long, long time, as you can probably tell from my accent. And when I retired from medicine, I didn't want to give up helping people, and I trained as a coach, and then I trained in hypnotherapy and fell madly in love with hypnotherapy. So I now, the main reason for me having the podcast, having my other podcast for doctors, is to get people to understand how helpful hypnosis can be for medical reasons and for lots of other reasons, because anything that makes you feel good improves your health. Doesn't cure cancer, but living your best life is what we want. It's what your doctor wants for you. It's what your therapist wants for you, what your mum wants for you. So the little things are as important to your well-being as the big things. So,
Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
How's life in Preston?
Yeah. Preston's fine. Thanks. Yeah. Okay. So I'm Martin Furber. I'm what's called a solution focused hypnotherapist and psychotherapist based here in the UK. I see people at my private practice in Preston, which you can see behind me, for those who are watching on YouTube. And I see people online as well, worldwide. I got into hypnotherapy. I started studying it 6 years ago. I've been practicing it. I'm in my second year of practicing it. And I got into hypnotherapy following a 20-year career in the jewelry trade.
It's an interesting swap.
It was an interesting swap. Yeah, I just very briefly. I was suffering with PTSD after 2 robberies at my jewelry shop in Preston, and I went for therapy, and it worked miraculously. I got hooked on it. I started studying it. I lost 9 stone in weight doing it, and
For non-UK people, that's about 126 pounds.
yeah. So instead of the fat jeweler from Preston, I'm the thin therapist from Preston now.
That's
So
good. That's
yeah,
good.
well, so that's our backgrounds. What about the kind of hypnotherapy we practice, though, Denise? Well, after you.
I think our styles are very similar. I trained
Mm,
at a place called the Hypnosis Motivation Institute, which has been around for more than 50 years in California. Fairly traditional hypnosis, a lot of progressive relaxation, and some Ericksonian. For those people who aren't familiar with Erickson, he was a psychiatrist in the 60s and 70s here in the US, and did a huge amount to help to help the progress of hypnosis. I'm babbling now, but it's a conversational style. You don't see an Ericksonian hypnotist with, count backwards from 3, just have a conversation. But the wording and the speed, those things are what helps people to relax, because as we both know, hypnosis is something you do anyway. Your
mm,
body and your mind just naturally allows your conscious mind to check out for a bit, so your subconscious can accept interesting suggestions, which
mm.
of course, when we're doing it, are things that we've already talked to our clients about and we know that they want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I practice what's called solution focused therapist, which sort of does what it says on the tin. We focus on the solutions, not the problems. And by that, a session is typically 50%, as we call the psychotherapy side of it, the talking therapy, and then 50% of hypnotic trance, where we embed all those positive suggestions within the session. The psychotherapy side, though, the immediate response I get from people is usually they think immediately psychoanalysis. You know, well, we're going to look for a problem. No, we don't do any regression these days, and we certainly don't try and do any analysis of cause or that kind of thing. It's talking therapy to establish what the client wants, what their positive future would look like, and you know, and to look for hints and tips there in what they're actually looking for, and then to embed that into the subconscious.
Do you do any of what most people would refer to as inner child work?
No.
If people clearly have, you don't do any stuff on past traumas?
No. If somebody comes with a past trauma that they want help getting over, we use a technique called the rewind technique, where we'll take them before that and immediately afterwards. Yeah, but we don't do an inner child as such. Yeah, with the whole process, though, obviously, I'm not an ex-doctor. I'm just a therapist. I don't want to overstate my pay grade here. So obviously,
and I'm just an ex-doctor, not a psychotherapist.
So we're not allowed to analyze. We're not allowed to diagnose, and we're certainly not allowed to prescribe. So it's the problem is whatever the client comes with and states is their issue. I mean, that's always my first question. What would you like help with?
Right. Yeah. I think we're both working on the same result.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we may get there a little differently, and of course that's why there are different flavors of hypnotist. Different people, different problems resonate differently with individuals.
Yeah. I mean, do you use a lot of direct suggestion when you've got your clients in hypnosis?
If there's somebody that requires it. The school that I attended refers to people as being emotional or physical, and very analytic people tend to respond better to inferred. So I tend to mix it up. A lot of the work isn't hypnosis, because that hypnosis doesn't have to be that long a process. It's the conversation that you have with the client first to really understand where they are and where they want to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we use very little direct suggestion. It's mainly the use of metaphor, and again, it's thinking on your feet once you've got the client into trance. If just off the top of my head, if a client is having issues with freeing themselves of an old relationship or something like that and wants to move on, you might use a metaphor about a butterfly emerging from the chrysalis, that kind of thing, and really get that, you know, get that into them while they're in trance and embed it in the subconscious mind.
I think going back a little bit to what we were saying about what do we think people think when they get to us, there is a tendency for people to think they can come with a laundry list of things get fixed in a single session. Of course, your subconscious would just say, and your conscious mind will click back to attention and nothing's going to work. You really can only work on one or two minor changes at a time, but those minor changes will have knock-on effects that can be really profound in the interim between sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the mind will always try and protect us from change. It relies on previous patterns of behavior and previous things, you know, to guide us. It's
very much the devil you know rather than the devil you don't. I'm
Absolutely.
uncomfortable here, but I know what's happening. This is where I'm staying. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, once we can start to form a new habit or something, of course, it gets easier and easier all the time.
Right.
You know, obviously, you know all the sort of neuroscience explanations for it. I tend to do things easily and refer to things like
I like easy.
Yeah, like the elephant clearing the path through the jungle.
Exactly.
You know, the more times it goes through there, the clearer the path becomes.
Right. But what's really nice about hypnosis is you can practice. For example, somebody who wants to improve their piano playing or their skiing technique, you can practice it in your imagination, and you can do that multiple times in a single session. In a day, you could sit down on your couch and practice that over and over and over, where in the real world, you'd have to go skiing 6 days in a row. And your brain, very, very clever organ, doesn't know the difference between the real world and the imaginary world. Your conscious mind, of course, does, but your brain is just, you say it's raining out, it will believe you unless your conscious mind makes some argument to the contrary.
Well, yeah, that's it. And if you try and say to people, your brain can't tell the difference between imagination and reality, at first they'll say, well, don't be stupid, of course I can. But then when you give them an analogy of, say, when they're watching a scary horror movie and they know they're at home perfectly safe on the couch.
It's the fact that because we don't understand it, it's hard to explain. There's a difference between your brain, which is a physical organ responding to physical things, and your imagination, and the mind, which is your awareness. And then we get into religion and a whole bunch of things. Nobody knows. Some of us think we know, but we can only interpret those things for ourselves. And those two work together. So, but nobody really understands quite. There have been some really good studies fairly recently shown with functional magnetic imaging. They've been able to show different parts of the brain lighting up, and you can see which bits are responding to what, which is very exciting for doctors, because doctors like evidence.
Yeah.
Give them some evidence, it makes them happy.
Yeah, everything's going to be evidence-based. It reminds me of John Ratey, who wrote Spark. What did he came up with now? Brain-derived neurotropic factor. Something to do with different parts of the brain lighting up when you're using your imagination, different parts of the brain lighting up when you're doing exercise and that kind of thing. He's the one that said if you go for a 20-minute run, it's like getting a hit of Ritalin and something else all in one go.
Oh, okay. I'll have to go read him.
He's American.
There's a lot of them. Yeah. I've followed David Spiegel's stuff he does quite a lot of YouTube stuff. He is a psychiatrist at Stanford who does research into this. I disagree with him on several points, which is rather cheeky of me since he's got some serious credentials. And my disagreement is he says that only a doctor should perform hypnosis. And I say only it should be doctor. If we're dealing with medical issues, it should be hypnotists working with doctors.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody on my one-to-ones without their doctor knowing about it and being able to communicate with them, because we want what's best for people. For example, one of the biggest things I get asked for is to reduce people's pain. That's fine and dandy. I don't like people being in pain, but pain is a useful tool. It tells us things. If you have pain and I get rid of the pain for you, but there's a reason for the pain that the doctor ought to be fixing, that is not in your best interest. So we want to be sure that we're not doing any harm.
Oh, absolutely. That's the first thing, actually. If somebody comes to see me for, chronic pain, long-term pain, they have to see their doctor first to get it checked out what it is, because obviously, as you know, being a doctor, if pain's there, it's there for a reason.
But once we know what the reason is, then we can address it, and you can continue to have your treatment for whatever is the cause, and hypnosis can certainly help. And that's quite common with oncology patients. Just reducing people's anxiety helps with pain too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we get into that a bit more, perhaps, when you're in a stressed state, especially if you had a cancer diagnosis or something like that, when you're in a stressed state, you're on red alert, you're in the primitive mind, your stress levels are high, you're chucking out, correct me if I'm wrong with this, you're chucking out cortisols and one thing and another which make you stressed, then you're going to feel the pain more, you're going to concentrate on the pain more, surely.
Right. Yeah. There are some exceptions. If you are running for your life and you jump over a wall and you break your leg, people can run on legs. It's amazing what the mind can do.
Oh yeah, you'll get a surge of adrenaline then, and you won't feel the pain. You hear that when somebody runs into a blazing house to rescue a child or something.
Right, that sort of thing. But they will feel it very shortly thereafter.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they don't feel it at the time though.
Yeah, but the point of that conversation was that we want to work with physicians
absolutely,
and other therapists. So I'm not saying that, oh no, hypnosis is the way to go when you've had, there are reasons that people have different types of psychoanalysis, psychotherapy, what's CBT? Cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy, and there are different schools of hypnosis that use different psychotherapies, right? And the school that you trained at, you had dual training, right, at Solution Focus?
I did solution focused hypnotherapy and psychotherapy with CPHT, and then separately I did the National Council of Hypnotherapy Practitioner Diploma.
Okay.
So that was
that sounds like a lot of hours of training.
It was a lot of hours, and altogether for both of them, I did about 200 clinical hours of case studies as well. So it's pretty good grounding, because of course anybody in the UK can call themselves a hypnotherapist. So it's always wise to check out who you're dealing with.
Pretty much in the US too, there's only 3 states that require any kind of registration. And they don't check actual training, I don't believe. Certainly the one I know best does not. And that is important when you do decide to go see somebody, check out their credentials, make sure they actually trained, and check out their track record, because of course somebody had to be first.
You know, lived experience.
Well, that's it. It takes quite a while. My school requires a year of supervised clinical practice, and then I switched over. I'm now I use the certification from the National Guild of Hypnotists. It's one of the largest in the world, mostly for the name recognition. But they have people certifying who've come from lots and lots of different areas. But they do. There's a minimum requirement. You can't get on those registries with, like, I did a weekend course. The weekend courses are great to get you interested, or, for example, should solution-focused hypnotherapy suddenly decide to do a weekend course, I would love to come and do that course because I'd like to add to my skill set.
Absolutely, a bit of continued professional development.
Yes. How do you get most of your continuing professional development, apart from our mutual friend?
Mine's all done through CPHT, who I trained with. In fact, the most recent CPD I did was more solution focused stuff, more solution focused questioning. Everything's based around getting the client into the left prefrontal cortex, getting them thinking positively, and sort of going for it with a set of questions that prompt all these positive responses all the time. Not talking about toxic positivity at the other end of the extreme, you know. But if somebody,
moderation in all things.
Oh, absolutely, I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there, you know. Oh, you've always got to be positive, always got to be positive. Oh, I lost a leg. Oh, think of the money you save on socks that lost twice as long. Not that kind of toxic positivity. Things on the basis of, if somebody, you know, isn't feeling so good one week, say, well, how would it have been if it was better? Tell me how that would have been. What would that have been like? And get them imagining positively.
Exactly, the imagination.
Yeah.
What do you do when a client, and I've had a couple of clients come to me, I don't have an imagination. I'm like, okay, wonder how you managed to walk out of the door this morning. How would you explain that to a client if somebody said, I don't have an imagination?
Okay, in the simplest form, imagination is how you visualize the future. So I'll ask them, can they think about the future? If they can, well, they can imagine.
Including the extremely short future.
The immediate
I can imagine
future.
a piece of toast.
It's the same way if somebody says they can't visualize something. I say to them, visualization isn't necessarily seeing a picture in your mind. It's how you interpret it. So therefore, if somebody says, I can't visualize something, I say to them, what colour's your front door? Where's the letterbox? Is it on the left or on the right? Where's the handle? Is it on the left or the right? And they're going into their minds to remember that in whatever form they do it. So that would always be my response to somebody who says, I can't visualize things.
Yeah, I think with a lot of people, when you say the word imagination, they think of very creative people and people that I can't imagine being the director of a movie, even though I'm learning a lot more tech these days about those things, because I don't have the kind of imagination to see what they see. When they look through a viewfinder, they see something quite different than I do. I cannot imagine the perfect see. Oh, if that person just moves that little bit, that will be so much better. And of course, we don't have a control on whether it did or not, but I don't have that kind of imagination. And you don't need that kind of imagination. You just have to be able to find a place in your mind where you feel safe.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
That sort of imagination.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think, again, for people who perhaps have never, ever experienced hypnotherapy or anything like that, that's perhaps a really important point to get over to them. We're all about finding that safe space in the mind and switching off the inner narrative, that voice in the client's head, whilst we sort of get into that safe space with them and help them visualize where they want to be.
When we talk about voices in your head, we're not talking psychosis here. We're talking about the beneath your consciousness, beneath your, almost beneath your subconsciousness. You don't hear somebody saying, "Oh, you're too fat to go to that party," or "Oh, you can't possibly stand up in a crowd of people and give a talk." You don't actually hear those. Some people do, but for the most part, we don't remember where those voices come from, and we don't really hear that. We just get the emotion that we had when we heard those things.
Yeah, we feel it.
Yeah,
we feel it.
So it's very much getting in touch with your feelings, but not necessarily reliving the trauma of something. When we work with people who've been traumatized, there are techniques that you can use to, I know you don't do trauma work, but there are techniques so that they can be removed from it. They don't have to go through the pain of it.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I was saying about
it and make it worse. Yeah,
that's what I was saying about doing a rewind technique. You'll go to before the traumatic event and you'll go to after it. You'll miss the event out itself. That's how I deal with any kind of trauma work. Excuse me. No, there's no need to revisit any trauma. It's not useful. It's not helpful at all, because anything you think about, you're going to amplify. So, I mean, this is always my argument. And again, sorry, I know you're a Brit, but you're in America, and our interpretation over here is, in America, you're nobody if you've not got a therapist. Everybody has a therapist for life over there. That's the way we see it. And well,
not quite for life. Serial therapists, people usually change.
But of course, if you're going to a therapist every week, though, and you're going to relive the same thing again and again every week, of course you're going to be in therapy forever.
Okay, I can think of some therapists that might find that worrisome. I would like to see hypnosis being used more by therapists. Most have at least had a smattering of education in it, but not enough, I think.
But just going back to
like EMDR, those things.
And
of course, it also, there's a sort of fashion cycle to these things. Hypnosis was very big. I can't imagine anybody has not heard of using hypnosis for childbirth. Yet 50 years ago, nobody would have talked about it.
No, it would have been give me the gas and air. That's the thing. Sorry, just going back to what we were talking about earlier. Say CBT, for example. So I'm presuming it's the same in the US as it is here in the UK. You may go and see your doctor, who will refer you to a psychiatrist. You'll go and, pour your heart out to your psychiatrist, and he may say, "Yes, I think you should have CBT." And then he will refer you on to a therapist who does the CBT.
Usually, very, very few psychiatrists do much in the way of therapy, just because of the way that insurance works here. So it's usually in tandem. If there's medication involved, it's usually a psychiatrist is involved in care, and they check in with each other. But most therapy, the standard 50-minute hour therapy sessions are usually with a psychoanalyst, a psychotherapist, the CBT person. There's many flavors of psychology as well. And of course, in this country, a lot of people, to be a psychotherapist in most states, not all, but most states, you need a doctorate in clinical psychology.
Yeah.
But you can hang a shingle with a lot of other labels. You can be a licensed clinical social worker. You can be a marriage and family counselor or marriage and family therapist. And there's different levels of training and different issues that they would deal with. So it's very complicated. So you need to start with your doctor, because they have maybe some better idea of what's available in your area also, and what other underlying issues there might be. Because we're not talking about people who have actual psychiatric illness, not talking about, you know, the emotional stuff where you can see where something started, but the biochemical stuff that just comes out of genetics, probably. We do need to be careful about this. You can certainly, I will see people who are bipolar or have other psychiatric illnesses, but again, only in conjunction with their physician or psychotherapist.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
That usually a psychiatrist.
Yeah, I mean, over here, if somebody comes to me and they tell me, you know, that they're depressed, they like help with it, this, that, and the other, and then, you know, they tell me they're on medication for depression, it's been given them to have a doctor. The first thing I do is write to their doctor to let them know, I've had a discussion with this person, they'd like to undergo solution-focused hypnotherapy. Do you have any objections? You know, keeping the doctor in the loop. It's a professional courtesy, for one thing, but also they may then write back and tell me, well, actually, no, they're on, you know, risperidone as well. They're on an antipsychotic or something, in which case, you know, obviously you don't do hypnotherapy with somebody who's taking antipsychotic medication. Okay, I don't know where the time's gone there, Denise. I think we'll call that quits for our first one. Shall we just let listeners know what to expect in future podcasts? Because it's not just two hypnotherapists talking, is it? It's two hypnotherapists,
no, it's two hypnotherapists talking to somebody else.
Yeah. So what kind of guests? What kind of guests can our listeners expect?
Well, so far we have 2 or 3 other flavors of hypnotists, hypnotherapists who've agreed to come and talk with us, and a couple of physicians in the US who are interested in hypnotherapy. In
the meantime, we better wrap this one up. And if you're still listening at this stage, thank you very much.
Thank you. This has been 2 therapists talking to each other.
2 hypnotherapists talking to each other.
Correct.
All right. See you soon, Denise.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We hope you've enjoyed listening. Please remember, this podcast is designed to give you an insight into therapeutic hypnosis and is for educational purposes only. So remember, consult with your own healthcare professional if you think something you've heard may apply to you or a loved one.
If you found this episode useful, you can apply for free continuing professional development or CME credits using the link provided in the show notes. Feel free to contact either of us through the links in the show notes. Join us again next week.